Time for a Vantage exclusive now. Last weekend, India secured a major win on the world stage, a successful G20 Summit with a joint statement that had 100% consensus. The negotiations went on into the wee hours. Many thought a joint declaration was impossible, but Indian diplomats made it happen. The question is how? How did India turn it around? We put this question to a key member of the Modi government who was in the thick of things, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. In an exclusive interview, he spoke to me about India's negotiation strategy, what other G20 members thought of India's presidency, and how it will impact India's bilateral negotiations, especially on trade. Also, is India open to investments from China, and why trade talks with Canada have been put on hold? We covered a lot of ground. Here's an excerpt from that conversation. Hello and welcome to this special interview. With me is Mr. Piyush Goyal, Union Minister of India, or should I say Bharat, sir. Welcome to Firstpost.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on your show, Palki ji.
It's an honor to have you. And let me start with a word of congratulations. India has just closed its G20 presidency on a high, at least the leaders of the summit. And we had everyone, all sides agree to a joint statement. You have passed a cabinet resolution hailing the success of the G20. Are you satisfied with the outcomes?
It truly is very, very satisfying, very, very encouraging to see the trust that India during its G20 presidency has been able to earn from leaders across all sides of the fence. Very different viewpoints were on offer. It was a difficult time. Most people had given up hope on an outcome document. I think it was very deft handling on the part of the Honorable Prime Minister and the team which was working on it. And clearly a matter of great satisfaction that what we had set out to achieve when the presidency came to India, making it a people's G20, Jan Bhagidari, get everybody involved, get the nation feel connected to an important event like this, and come up with outcomes which demonstrate to the world that India cares for not only our 140 crore Indians, but for the entire world. I think that message has gone down very, very strongly from this presidency.
Yes, and like I was telling you, the Brazilian president, Brazil is the next chair, and they said they're taking lessons from India. You mentioned Jan Bhagidari. It truly was a people's event. And the people have one question in mind. How did you make it happen? You served as the G20 Sherpa in 2021. And while we see the decisions come out, we're all curious to know what goes into forging that consensus. How do you achieve something like this?
When we got the presidency on 1st of December last year, the situation was somewhat like what we hear of in the Charles Dickens book, A Tale of Two Cities. On the one hand, the times were good. On the other hand, the times were full of despair, difficult times. And the situation was challenging. We had barely come out of COVID. The war was still raging on. The East and the West were highly polarized, divided. And clearly, the G20 was addressing the challenges of a broken world order. At that point of time, for India to present such an ambitious agenda, which talked about the entire world coming together, which talked about the world addressing the needs of a long awaited better deal for the less developed countries, the developing countries, particularly in the global south. A world which was looking for inclusive and sustainable solutions, yet was conscious that it's a very, very different level of development that we see in different parts of the world, which means we have to be more accommodative, we have to try and come up with balanced and equitable solutions. So there were a lot of challenges, and in some sense, you get the best out of Prime Minister Modi when there is a challenge on hand. And we saw that happening in the G20. He led from the front. He was really on the front foot through the Indian G20 presidency.
How does the Delhi Declaration and the conversations you've had, especially over the past few days, how does it impact India's bilateral engagements with partners, especially on trade? Because we've seen a lot of focus on trade deals lately, and over the weekend we saw two in particular, the UK and Saudi Arabia. Which are the areas or regions we're focusing on to push for deals like these?
I think the biggest achievement of the entire G20 presidency has been trust. Bilateral trading arrangements or economic partnerships that we are pursuing with the UK, also with the EU, the 27-nation bloc of EU, who is our second largest trading partner after the United States. We also were in a dialogue with Canada, which for some time we are looking at to we've given it a pause to see how we need to take it forward going forward.
Why is that, if I may ask?
There are several reasons. We need to make sure that geopolitically and economically we are all on the same page. And therefore, the pause on the Canada discussions.
Are we not on the same page with Canada?
We are on good page, but we have had certain issues which are of serious concern. They have been highlighted in the bilateral meeting that the Honourable Prime Minister had with the Prime Minister of Canada. And we are hoping for resolution of some of these issues before we take it forward. So you will see that we have a very vast array of negotiations underway. In fact, most teams in the Commerce Ministry are actually doing two-shift working, a morning negotiation with one and another in the evening. And you really need to be very sharply focused on each negotiation because you are crystal gazing into 30, 40, 50 years into the future.
Is India open for business for Chinese investors?
Well, India is open for business for all investors across the world. We are fair to all countries. We would only like to make sure that we get reciprocal access, reciprocal benefits. We'd like to make sure that strategically India's interests are not compromised. And therefore, India is a little cautious when it comes to investments from all our land bordering countries, whether it's China or any other land bordering country. We are looking at a little more cautious, calibrated approach.
The world is looking at diversifying supply chains, and most international companies are adopting a policy of China plus one, which is seen as an opportunity for India. And at the same time, there are other players like Thailand and Vietnam. They offer similar deals, similar advantages. They're vying for the same market. What is India's strategy?
Frankly, China plus one is a very popular terminology. Then you have anything but China, then you have friend-shoring and near-shoring. All of these have been in public domain for quite some time now. And I do recognize that India also benefits when people are looking for trusted partners, looking for rules-based, transparent economic systems where they feel confident that they, and safer also. No Indian businessman disappears in the middle of the night for months and then comes out as a professor. But I think today, and more particularly after this G20 presidency, India has changed the rules of the game. The narrative is now very much different. India on its own stream, India on its own legs, today goes from a position of strength with self-confidence and engages with the rest of the world, invites investments, invites businesses to come and work in India. And I think it will no more be a diversification strategy. It will not necessarily be only about resilient supply chains. India will now become a compulsive destination. India will become the need of the hour. More and more companies are recognizing that the democracy, the demographic dividend, and the diversity, the 3 Ds that India offers, We have become an aspirational society, a young aspirational India which is going to drive and power India on its own stream. We will become the pole around which world economies will want to work and engage.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking all the questions and for all your time and for sharing your perspectives with us. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Palki ji.
Tonight we start with a picture. It does not show politics or strategy or diplomacy. It shows human loss. It shows a father bidding farewell to his son. Take a look at this. These pictures are from Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir. The father is Ghulam Hassan Bhatt. He retired as Inspector General of Jammu and Kashmir Police. He's already given his career to this country, but yesterday he gave up even more. His son was among 3 security officials killed in a terror attack. And this is how things unfolded. On Tuesday evening, security officials received a tip-off. Some terrorists were holed up in Anantnag in the forests of Gadul. A joint team began operations. It comprised officers from the army and the police. On Wednesday morning, the team came under fire. Reports say it was an ambush. The terrorists positioned themselves strategically. The forest also gave them cover. So when the security team advanced, the terrorists fired incessantly. 3 of the officers were injured. They were airlifted to the hospital, but by then it was too late. All 3 men succumbed to their injuries. Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak, and Deputy Superintendent of Police Humayun Bhatt. The picture we showed you was of his father. Their stories are inspirational but also heartbreaking. Colonel Manpreet Singh had 2 young children, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. DSP Bhatt was also a father. His son is just 29 days old. By night on Wednesday, the operation was halted. It resumed earlier today. Kashmir police say they have encircled two Lashkar-e-Toiba terrorists in a building. The area has been cordoned off. Drones and helicopters have been deployed. Additional troops have also been rushed in. Now, the Lashkar-e-Toiba is a Pakistani terror group. It was founded by Hafiz Saeed, the same man who plotted the 26/11 attacks in Mumbai. So once again, the Pak imprint is clear. The encounter in Anantnag is the second this week. The first one was in Rajouri. 2 terrorists were killed by the security forces there. Unfortunately, 1 soldier was also killed in action in Rajouri. After the encounter, the area was combed, and what did they find? Large quantities of ammunition, also medicines with Pakistani markings. Like I said, the imprint is clear. These deaths have mobilized public opinion in India. There are calls to cut cricketing ties with Pakistan. As you know, the Asia Cup is underway. India could end up playing Pakistan in the final on Sunday. The World Cup is also coming up. Pakistan is expected to travel to India for the tournament. Right now, there are calls to cancel all of this. The Asia Cup, the World Cup, and all cricketing ties. The BCCI, the Indian Cricket Board, has not reacted yet. But the anger on social media is palpable. Their argument is quite straightforward. Pakistani terrorists are killing our soldiers in Kashmir. How can we play cricket with that same country? The government is yet to weigh in. In the meantime, let's also look at the situation in Kashmir. Are things escalating there? Well, last month, there was a similar attack. Terrorists ambushed security officials near a forest. 3 soldiers were killed. Both these attacks happened south of the Pir Panjal Mountains. Now, some quick facts. The Pir Panjal is part of the lower Himalayas. It is rugged with dense forests, which means it's the perfect hiding spot. Plus, the mountains are interconnected. You can venture out of the cover, carry out attacks, and then return to hide in the forest. Security officials say their next mission will focus on this mountain range. They want to drive terrorists out of the Pir Panjal. The recent attacks confirm this. Most of them did not happen in the Kashmir Valley. They happened in places south of the Pir Panjal like Poonch, Rajouri and Anantnag. But beyond these pockets, the situation has improved. Like the terrorist recruitment numbers show. Look at these numbers. It was 191 in 2020. 191 terrorists were recruited in 2020. This year it has come down to 7. Just 7 recruitments in 9 months so far. In the same period, more than 600 terrorists have been neutralized. 86 of them were of foreign origin. So how many are left in Jammu and Kashmir? Well, we have figures from May this year. The government says there are 107 terrorists still operating in the Kashmir Valley, plus 15 in the Jammu region. Around 60% of them are foreign terrorists. Their masters in Pakistan have sensed the changing reality. Kashmir is making giant strides. Earlier this year, Srinagar hosted a G20 meeting. Since then, foreign tourism has picked up. Around 25,000 foreign tourists have arrived so far. Last year, it was around 20,000. Chances are more people will come for the Kashmir winter. Pakistan does not want this. They want to keep Kashmir pinned down with fear, hence the recent attacks. We don't have much hope from the Pakistani establishment. But their people, well, maybe all hope is not lost. Our next story will tell you why. The G20 Summit, as you know, is over. But like a blockbuster movie, the reviews are still pouring in. And what's the verdict? It was certainly a must-watch. You do have some holdouts like Ukraine and China, but broadly speaking, people are happy, even people in Pakistan. That's right. Ordinary people in Pakistan have reacted to India's G20. Those interviewed have great things to say. Some have praised India's economic growth, others hailed India's political influence, but as expected, comparisons were drawn. Comparisons between India and Pakistan. I guess you cannot blame them. Both countries became independent at the same time. One is a G20 member. It is being courted by all major powers in the world. And the other, living from one IMF bailout to another. So these reactions are expected. Listen in.
The president of the US and the Saudi Crown Prince visited India for the summit. When the heads of the top 20 countries visit a country, it is an honor for that nation. The Indian economy will get many benefits out of this summit.
We are trying to save our country from defaulting on loans. Meanwhile, India is hosting the 20 biggest economies. India has taken a great step. It was a great opportunity for the people of India. The people must be proud.
Pakistan's foreign policy in the last 7 decades has failed. Our neighbor is hosting the biggest economies in the world, but people here are not even aware of what's happening.
Ordinary people do not have blinkers on. They react to what they see. And what they saw in New Delhi was obvious. India's economic and political power was on full display. Meanwhile, Pakistan was not even mentioned. Just think about it. The G20 summit was all about the global south. Pakistan is part of the global south. Yet, they had zero influence. Their government had nothing good to say about the summit. In fact, the leadership is salty. This is what former Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has said, I'm quoting, if the 2017 momentum was maintained, Pakistan would have been counted in the G20 and the summit would have been hosted in Pakistan. Now, to give you some context, 2017 is when Nawaz Sharif was ousted from power. He says his government was doing well. And if that work had continued, Pakistan would have entered the G20. Not just entered, they would have hosted the G20. That's what Nawaz Sharif claims. Do the facts check out, though? South Africa is the smallest G20 economy. Their GDP is around $400 billion. What about Pakistan? Around $370 billion. So there is distance to cover. Plus, no prime minister in Pakistan has ever completed their term. So Nawaz Sharif is asking for the impossible, really. He's talking about a scenario that has never happened. What about Pakistan's media? What do they have to say? Well, some things they got right. Let me quote from an editorial from the Dawn newspaper. Where Pakistan is concerned, due to our internal issues, we are largely spectators rather than active players in these transnational geo-economic networks. In simpler words, we are irrelevant. That's what they're saying. I must say that's brutally honest. But the same article also peddles some typical Pakistani propaganda. Listen to this. Pakistan must also realize that despite India's atrocious human rights record in held Kashmir, the West, as well as our Muslim brothers, seem least concerned and are eager to do business with Delhi. So the West is wrong. The so-called Muslim brothers are also wrong. India, of course, is wrong. But only Pakistan is right. Surely that cannot be the logical conclusion here. The truth is, Pakistan's establishment must be fuming. India has just hosted 43 world leaders. The entire planet was being run from New Delhi. Meanwhile, Pakistan cannot even host a cricket tournament. That's how bad their security is. But then again, they've only themselves to blame. Pakistan's leadership used terror as a state policy, and now you're seeing the returns. Homegrown terrorists are attacking Pakistani soldiers. Their former proxies are striking new friendships. I'm talking about the Afghan Taliban. Pakistan helped them capture Kabul. Then Prime Minister Imran Khan asked the world to recognize the Taliban regime. But 2 years later, nothing has gone to plan. The Taliban are engaged in a border standoff with Pakistan. They're building outposts on Pakistani land. They're even mocking Pakistan's economy. So the Taliban is not taking Pakistan seriously. What about their Iron brother China? Well, same story. Beijing seems to have one-upped Islamabad in Kabul. On Wednesday, China named a new ambassador to Afghanistan. They are the first country to do so, to name an envoy in Afghanistan. Not even Pakistan has an ambassador in Kabul. Does this mean that China has recognized the Taliban regime? Well, Beijing is not giving much away. They're calling it normal diplomatic rotation, whatever that means. But these pictures are not easy to justify. A Chinese diplomat presenting his credentials to the Taliban prime minister. If this is not recognition, we wonder what is. So Pakistan is pretty much losing the plot on their economy, on their strategy, and definitely their internal politics. Because when Pakistanis say India got it right, rest assured, Pakistan got something wrong. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. What do you do when you get a new car? You definitely show it off to your friends. Well, world leaders are no different. Russian President Vladimir Putin invited North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to check out his Russian-made limousine. In the United States, a furry fugitive led the police on a wild chase. The pet lemur had escaped from its home, but it was later caught. And soon you could be flying to hospitals. An Israeli startup is testing its flying taxi for a quick ride to the hospital. Finally, we are also taking you back in history. On this day in 1960, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Venezuela founded the oil cartel OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. In the next 2 decades, OPEC restructured the global system of oil production. Currently, the OPEC accounts for 30% of global oil production. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We got this, Frenchie. We're getting like the tree or something.
Oh, why did they?